The evening rush at the Silver Spoon restaurant was in full swing. The clink of silverware against fine china, mixed with the warm hum of conversation and occasional bursts of laughter. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over the white tablecloths and polished wooden floors. It was the kind of place where people came not just to eat but to be seen. Lily Wang wiped a strand of dark hair from her forehead as she balanced 3 plates along her arm. At 24, she'd mastered the art of serving without being noticed, moving quickly between tables, anticipating needs before customers even realized they had them. Her black uniform blended with the shadows as she weaved through the crowded dining room, her steps quick but careful. "Table 7 needs more bread, and 12 is asking for their check," whispered Thomas, another server as they passed each other. Lily nodded, mentally adding these tasks to her growing list. She'd been on her feet for nearly 8 hours already, having picked up an extra shift when another waitress called in sick. The extra money would help with her grandmother's medical bills, which seemed to multiply faster than Lily could pay them down. She delivered the 3 steaming plates to table 9, pan-seared salmon with roasted vegetables for the woman in the blue dress, filet mignon for the older gentleman, and the house special pasta for the young man who hadn't looked up from his phone all evening. "Can I get you anything else?" Lily asked with a genuine smile that hid her exhaustion. The woman in blue barely glanced up. "This salmon looks undercooked." I asked for well done. Though the fish was perfectly cooked to medium as the menu suggested, Lily didn't hesitate. "I'm so sorry about that. I'll take it back to the kitchen right away." As she turned with the plate, she nearly collided with a group being led to their table by Miguel, the host. Lily stepped back quickly, managing to keep the salmon from sliding off the plate, but in doing so, bumped into another table. That table happened to belong to Robert Kensington. Everyone who worked at the Silver Spoon knew Robert Kensington. He was the kind of regular who never remembered your name, but expected you to remember exactly how he liked his martini. Dry, with 3 olives, stirred precisely 12 times. His real estate company had transformed the city skyline with gleaming high-rises that most restaurant staff could never afford to live in. Tonight, Robert was entertaining 4 business associates, their table covered with half-empty wine bottles and documents spread between dinner plates. As Lily bumped the edge, a glass of water tipped over, sending ice cubes sliding across papers and onto a man's expensive-looking suit pants. "For heaven's sake." Robert's voice cut through the nearby conversations like a knife. "Can't you watch where you're going?" Lily set down the salmon plate and immediately grabbed napkins to soak up the spill. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me clean this up right away." One of the men at the table stood up, brushing water droplets from papers that looked like contracts. "These are important documents," he said with a frown. "They seem fine, Harold," said another man at the table. Just a little damp at the corners, but Robert Kensington was not so easily pacified. In his mid-50s, with silver hair and a perpetual tan, he had the confident posture of someone rarely told no. He looked at Lily not as a person, but as an inconvenience, a mistake in his otherwise perfect evening. "Is this how you treat all your customers?" he asked loudly. "Or just the ones who leave good tips?" Lily felt her cheeks burn as nearby diners turned to watch. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Kensington. It was an accident." "An accident that could have been avoided with a little professionalism," he said, making a show of moving his leather briefcase away from the wet spot on the tablecloth. "Perhaps you're in the wrong line of work if walking and carrying plates at the same time is too challenging." Lily continued to mop up the water, keeping her eyes down. She'd learned long ago that arguing with customers like Robert Kensington wasn't worth it, no matter how unfair their comments might be. She needed this job too badly. "Let me bring you fresh water and some more napkins," she said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. As she gathered the wet napkins, her eyes briefly drifted across the room to the baby grand piano that sat in the corner. The Silver Spoon had installed it years ago, mostly as decoration, though occasionally they hired musicians for special events. In the dim light, its polished black surface gleamed like a pool of ink. Robert caught her glance and something shifted in his expression. The annoyance was still there, but now mixed with curiosity. "Do you play?" he asked suddenly, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer must be no. Surprised by the question, Lily hesitated. Oh, come on, Robert," said the only woman at the table, dressed in a crisp pantsuit. "Leave the poor girl alone. We all know it was just an accident." But Robert waved her off, his eyes still fixed on Lily. "I asked if you play the piano." Lily straightened up, wet napkins in hand. Something about his tone, the absolute certainty that someone like her couldn't possibly possess such a skill, made her pause. "A little," she said finally, which wasn't entirely untrue. She did play, but saying a little was like saying the ocean was a little wet. Robert laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "A little? Of course." He turned to his companions. "Helen here plays a little too, don't you, Helen?" "Studied at Juilliard for 6 years." The woman in the pantsuit looked uncomfortable. "Robert, please." "No, I'm curious now." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying Lily with amused interest. "What can you play?" "Chopsticks?" "Heart and soul?" By now, several nearby tables had gone quiet, watching the exchange. Lily could feel the eyes on her back, hear the whispers. She saw Carlo, the restaurant manager, hovering nearby, clearly concerned but unsure whether to intervene. "I should get back to my other tables," Lily said, attempting to step away. The salmon for table 9 was getting cold, and she still needed to bring bread to 7 and the check to 12. "I'll make you a deal," Robert said loudly, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a leather wallet and removed several crisp $100 bills, laying them on the table with a theatrical flourish. $5,000 says you can't play anything worth listening to on that piano." A soft murmur rippled through the nearby tables. $5,000 was more than Lily made in 2 months. "Mr. Kensington," Carlo finally stepped forward. "Our staff are here to serve food, not to entertain. I'm sure Ms. Wang has other customers." "It's a simple offer," Robert continued, ignoring Carlo. 5 minutes of your time. If you can play something that impresses me, truly impresses me, not just plunking out Mary Had a Little Lamb, this money is yours." No strings attached. Lily stared at the cash on the table. $5,000 would cover her grandmother's physical therapy for months. It would mean she could cut back on double shifts and maybe even start taking classes at the community college again. But the way Robert was looking at her, with that smug certainty that she would either refuse or embarrass herself, made her stomach twist. "What's it going to be?" Robert asked, spreading his hands. "Surely 5 minutes isn't too much to ask for $5,000. Unless, of course, you can't actually play." Harold, the man whose papers had gotten wet, looked embarrassed. "Robert, this is unnecessary. The girl already apologized for the accident." "I'm not doing this because of the accident," Robert replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'm offering her an opportunity. That's what I do, create opportunities." He looked back at Lily. "So what's it going to be? Are you going to show us what you can do? Or would you rather stick to carrying plates?" The restaurant had grown even quieter. Even the kitchen staff had paused to watch through the service window. Lily could feel everyone waiting for her response. The other diners, her fellow servers. Carlo wringing his hands by the host stand. She thought about her grandmother at home, propped up in a hospital bed that took up most of their small living room. She thought about the stack of medical bills on their kitchen counter, and the notice from the physical therapy center warning that they might have to reduce her grandmother's sessions if the outstanding balance wasn't paid. And then she thought about the piano in the corner, about how long it had been since she'd touched one outside of the community center, where she sometimes practiced late at night when the building was empty and no one could hear. Slowly, Lily set down the wet napkins on a side table. She untied her black apron and handed it to Thomas, who had appeared at her side. "I'll cover your tables," he whispered, giving her shoulder a quick squeeze. Carlo looked like he wanted to object, but something in Lily's expression stopped him. Robert was smiling now, clearly enjoying the spectacle he'd created. "That's the spirit," he said, raising his newly filled water glass in a mock toast. "Let's see what a little playing sounds like." As Lily walked toward the piano, she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes following her. Her heart pounded against her ribs. It had been so long since she'd played for an audience, so long since she'd allowed herself to be seen as anything other than a waitress, a granddaughter, a girl struggling to make ends meet. She sat down on the bench, adjusted it slightly, and placed her hands on the keys. The cool ivory under her fingertips felt like greeting an old friend. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the noise of the restaurant fade away. What should she play? Something simple and pleasant that would satisfy Robert's challenge without revealing too much? Or Lily opened her eyes and straightened her back. No. If she was going to do this, she would do it properly, She would play not for Robert Kensington and his $5,000, but for herself, for the girl who had once dreamed of concert halls before life took her down a different path. Her fingers hovered over the keys for one more heartbeat, and then she began to play. The first notes that flowed from Lily's fingers silenced the entire restaurant. She began with something unexpected, not the classical piece everyone anticipated, but the opening of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 in D minor. One of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical repertoire. It was a mountain that many professional pianists spent years trying to climb. And here was Lily Wang, a waitress in a black uniform with tired eyes, playing it as if she'd been born with the music already in her hands. Robert Kensington's smug smile faltered. He had expected fumbling, amateur playing, the kind of hesitant pecking that comes from childhood lessons long abandoned. What he got instead was the confident, passionate performance of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Someone who understood the soul of the music. At nearby tables, conversations died mid-sentence. A waiter stood frozen, pitcher of water suspended above a glass. Even the kitchen fell silent, the chef and line cooks pausing to listen as the powerful music filled every corner of the restaurant. Lily's body swayed slightly as she played, her eyes half closed in concentration. Her hands moved across the keys with a precision and emotional depth that seemed impossible from the same fingers that had been carrying plates moments before. The complex runs of notes cascaded like water, building into powerful chords that made the air vibrate. As the introduction gave way to the main theme, a woman at a corner table pressed a hand to her mouth, visibly moved. An older man near the bar closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. No one touched their food. No one sipped their drinks. They all just listened. Robert leaned forward in his seat, the amusement gone from his face, replaced by something like disbelief. The woman in the pantsuit, Helen, was watching Lily with widened eyes, her own training allowing her to recognize just how extraordinary this performance truly was. "My God," she whispered to Robert. Where did she learn to play like that? But Robert didn't answer. He couldn't seem to take his eyes off Lily, his expression a complex mixture of surprise, embarrassment, and growing admiration. At the piano, Lily had forgotten about the restaurant, about Robert, about the $5,000. She'd forgotten about her aching feet and the double shift, and even, for a moment, about her grandmother's medical bills. There was only the music now, the conversation between her fingers and the keys. The melody that had lived in her heart during all those years when playing had seemed like a luxury she could no longer afford. The piece built in intensity, racing through passages that would leave most pianists' hands cramping. But Lily played on, her technique flawless, her interpretation personal and moving. This wasn't just technical skill, it was artistry of the highest order. 5 minutes passed, then 10. No one interrupted. If anything, the audience leaned in closer, hungry for every note. The manager, Carlo, stood by the host stand with his arms crossed, watching with an expression of wonder. Thomas, who had taken over Lily's tables, wasn't even pretending to work anymore. He just stood against the wall listening like everyone else. A few people had taken out their phones to record the unexpected performance. Others simply watched, transfixed, as if afraid to move for fear of breaking the spell. When Lily finally brought the piece to its conclusion, the thunderous, triumphant final chords resonating through the room, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the restaurant erupted in applause. People stood from their tables, clapping and cheering. A man near the window whistled. A woman in the back called out, "Bravo!" Lily opened her eyes fully, blinking as if awakening from a dream. Color rose to her cheeks as she realized that every person in the restaurant was looking at her, applauding her. It had been so long since she'd experienced this feeling, the warm rush of connecting with an audience, of sharing something beautiful and seeing it reflected back in their faces. She rose from the bench and gave a small, almost shy bow. At his table, Robert Kensington sat still, the only person not clapping. His companions had all joined in the standing ovation, but he remained seated, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he too stood up and began to applaud, his eyes never leaving Lily. As the applause finally began to die down, an older gentleman approached the piano. He walked with a slight limp, using a cane, but his posture was upright and dignified. Gray hair framed a face lined with experience, with keen eyes that had seen much of the world. "Excuse me," he said to Lily, his voice carrying a slight accent. My name is Anton Baranov. I conduct the Metropolitan Philharmonic. A murmur went through the crowd. Anton Baranov was indeed a well-known conductor. His concerts consistently sold out, his recordings award-winning. I have heard many pianists play that piece, he continued, including some of the most celebrated in the world. Few have played it with the emotional honesty I just heard from you. He tilted his head slightly. Where did you study? The restaurant grew quiet again as everyone strained to hear her answer. Lily hesitated, suddenly conscious of her waitress uniform, of the order pad still tucked in her pocket. I was at Juilliard, she said finally, her voice soft but clear. For a while. Another ripple of whispers spread through the room. The prestigious music school was not a place you attended for a while. It was a dream destination for young musicians, a launching pad for international careers. And now you wait tables, Anton said, not unkindly but with genuine curiosity. Lily nodded. Life happened, she said simply. From across the room, Robert Kensington was making his way toward the piano, the $5,000 clutched in his hand. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by something that looked remarkably like respect. I believe I owe you this, he said, extending the cash toward Lily. She looked at the money but didn't immediately take it. I didn't play for the money, Mr. Kensington. I know that now, he replied quietly. But a deal's a deal. And that was... He seemed to search for the right words. Far more than a little playing. Lily hesitated a moment longer, then accepted the money, tucking it carefully into her pocket. $5,000. It would cover her grandmother's therapy for months. It might even allow her to reduce her hours at the restaurant and practice more. Thank you, she said. Why did you stop? Anton asked, bringing the conversation back to his original question. A talent like yours, it's extraordinary. It's rare. The restaurant was still quiet, everyone listening. Lily could feel the weight of their curiosity. These people who had seen her as nothing more than someone who brought their food were now looking at her with new eyes, seeing the person behind the uniform. My grandmother had a stroke, Lily explained, her voice steady but soft, 4 years ago. She raised me after my parents died, and there was no one else to take care of her. The medical bills, and she shrugged slightly. Juilliard doesn't exactly wait for you to figure your life out. And playing doesn't pay the bills. At least not the kind of playing I was trying to do. Classical piano, Anton nodded in understanding. The most difficult path, perhaps. I still practice, Lily added, a small smile touching her lips. At the community center downtown. They let me use their piano after hours, usually after midnight when the building's empty. It's not a Steinway like this one, but it works. A woman at a nearby table dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Even Robert looked affected by her story. Carlo, the manager, stepped forward. Lily has worked here for 2 years, he said, his voice carrying a note of amazement. She's never once mentioned any of this. Never asked to play the piano during breaks or staff parties, nothing. It wasn't relevant to carrying plates, Lily said with a small shrug. Anton's eyebrows rose slightly at her modesty. Well, it's relevant to me, he said decisively. The Philharmonic has a special performance series next month. One of our scheduled pianists had to withdraw due to health issues. We need a replacement. He pulled a card from his pocket and handed it to her. Come to this address tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. I'd like you to audition formally. Lily stared at the card, her eyes wide. I haven't performed publicly in years, and certainly not with an orchestra. Your performance just now suggests otherwise, Anton replied with a gentle smile. Besides, talent like yours doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right moment to re-emerge. Before Lily could respond, a commotion at the entrance caught everyone's attention. A young man burst through the door, scanning the restaurant frantically until his eyes landed on Lily. Lily, he called out, hurrying toward her. It was David, the neighbor who looked in on her grandmother when Lily was at work. His face was flushed, his breathing rapid as if he'd been running. It's your grandmother. She's asking for you. The home health nurse thinks... He hesitated, lowering his voice. She thinks you should come now. The joy and wonder that had filled the restaurant just moments before suddenly evaporated. Lily's face drained of color. I have to go, she said, already moving toward the door, the conductor's card clutched in her hand. Of course. Anton nodded. Tomorrow, if you can. Robert Kensington stepped forward. Do you need a ride? My car's just outside. Lily looked at him in surprise, seeing yet another transformation in the man who had humiliated her less than half an hour ago. Thank you. But David drove here. As Lily rushed toward the exit, pausing only to grab her coat and bag from behind the counter, the restaurant remained oddly silent. The magic of her performance still lingered in the air, but now mixed with the reality of her interrupted life, the talent and the struggle existing side by side. Just before she reached the door, Thomas called out to her. Lily, your tables, don't worry about them. I've got them covered. Just go. She gave him a grateful nod, then disappeared into the night, leaving behind a room full of people who would never again see a waitress as just a waitress. David's old Honda sped through the night streets, the engine protesting as he pushed it faster than usual. Beside him, Lily sat with her hands tightly clasped in her lap, the $5,000 still stuffed in her pocket, forgotten in the rush of fear. What exactly did the nurse say? Lily asked, her voice barely audible over the car's rumble. David kept his eyes on the road. Just that your grandmother was asking for you and that we should hurry. She sounded worried, Lily. Lily nodded, staring out the window at the passing city lights. Her mind was a storm of emotions, the lingering high of playing the piano again, the unexpected opportunity from the conductor, and now the cold dread about her grandmother's condition. I shouldn't have taken that extra shift, she said, the guilt evident in her voice. I should have been home with her. David glanced at her. You can't be in two places at once. Besides, you need the money. Lily touched her pocket where the cash from Robert Kensington sat. Just an hour ago it had seemed like a miracle, enough to cover her grandmother's therapy and maybe even allow Lily to cut back on her hours. Now it felt insignificant compared to what might be happening. They pulled up to the small apartment building where Lily and her grandmother lived. The lights were on in their ground floor unit, and a car Lily recognized as belonging to Nancy, the home health nurse, was parked outside. Lily was out of David's car before he'd fully stopped, rushing up the walkway and through the front door. Grandma, she called, hurrying into the living room that had been converted into a bedroom, when the stairs to the actual bedroom became too difficult for her grandmother to manage. Mei Wang lay in the hospital bed that dominated the small room. At 76, she looked frailer than Lily remembered her being that morning. Her white hair was spread across the pillow, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow but steady. Nancy, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and practical hands, was checking the monitors beside the bed. She looked up as Lily entered. She's stable now, Nancy said, her voice low and calm, but she had a bad episode about an hour ago. Her blood pressure dropped suddenly and she became disoriented. Lily rushed to her grandmother's side, taking one thin hand in hers. Why didn't you call me right away? She made me promise not to, Nancy replied with a small shrug. You know how she is. Said you were working and needed the money more than you needed to worry about her. But when she kept asking for you afterward, I sent David to get you anyway. As if sensing her granddaughter's presence, May's eyes fluttered open. A weak smile spread across her face when she saw Lily. There you are, she whispered, her voice scratchy. You're still in your work clothes. Did David drag you away from the middle of your shift? Despite her condition, there was a note of disapproval in her voice. You need those hours, Lily. Lily squeezed her grandmother's hand, fighting back tears. It doesn't matter. I'm here now. May's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her granddaughter's face. Something's different. You look like you used to, before. Lily glanced at Nancy, who nodded and discreetly left the room, gesturing for David to follow. When they were alone, Lily sat on the edge of the bed. I played today, Grandma, she said softly, at the restaurant, on a beautiful Steinway grand piano. May's eyes widened, more alert now. You played? In front of people? Lily nodded, a small smile breaking through her worry. It's a long story, but yes, and she hesitated, hardly believing it herself. A conductor was there, from the Metropolitan Philharmonic. He wants me to audition tomorrow. May's grip on Lily's hand tightened ever so slightly. Anton Baranov, she said, not as a question but as a statement. Surprised, Lily nodded. How did you know? A hint of the old sharpness returned to May's eyes. I still read the art section, you know. I know who conducts the Philharmonic. She tried to push herself up slightly, wincing with the effort until Lily adjusted the bed to a more upright position. Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single detail. So Lily told her about Robert Kensington's dare, about the $5,000, about the way the restaurant had fallen silent as she played, about Anton's offer and the business card now tucked carefully beside the cash in her pocket. As she spoke, May's eyes filled with tears. "I've waited 4 years to hear you talk like this again," she said when Lily finished. 4 years of watching you work yourself to exhaustion, pretending you didn't miss it. "I couldn't leave you," Lily said simply. "And we needed the money. And I felt guilty every day for being the reason you gave up your dream." May's voice was stronger now, animated by emotion. "Do you think I wanted that? To be the weight that dragged you down?" "You never dragged me down," Lily protested. "You raised me. You sacrificed everything for me after Mom and Dad died. Taking care of you isn't a burden, it's a burden," May interrupted firmly. "I'm not a fool, Lily. I know what this has cost you." She took a shaky breath. "But tonight you played again, and someone important heard you." Her eyes shone with a fierce light. "You're going to that audition tomorrow." Lily shook her head. "I can't leave you. Not after what happened tonight. Nancy said your blood pressure. Nancy worries too much. I'm old, Lily. My blood pressure does what it wants." May fixed her with a stern look, the same one that had sent Lily to practice the piano for hours as a child. "You're going to that audition. I won't have you miss this opportunity because of me." "But no buts. I raised you better than to make excuses." May's expression softened slightly. "Besides, I'm feeling much better now. Having you home helps. And knowing you played today?" She smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. "That's the best medicine you could have given me." Lily wasn't convinced, but she knew that stubborn look in her grandmother's eyes. It was the same determination that had gotten May through raising an orphaned granddaughter, through working 2 jobs to pay for Lily's first piano lessons, through all the hardships of their life together. "I'll see how you're doing in the morning," Lily said. "Compromising." May nodded, satisfied for now. "That seems fair." She relaxed back against her pillows, suddenly looking tired again. "Now tell me more about this man who dared you to play. The one who offered all that money." Lily described Robert Kensington in more detail, his initial arrogance, the way his expression had changed as she played, his unexpected offer of a ride when David had arrived with news about May. "Sounds like you humbled him," May said with a touch of pride. "Good. Rich men could use more humbling." She yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. "And this conductor, Anton. You'll need to practice before tomorrow. The piano at the community center? I'll figure it out," Lily assured her, seeing that her grandmother was fighting to stay awake. "Get some rest now." May's eyes closed, but she continued to hold Lily's hand. "Promise me something," she murmured, already half asleep. "Anything. Promise me you won't let me stand in your way again. Promise me you'll play, like you were meant to." Her voice trailed off as sleep claimed her, her breathing becoming deep and regular. Lily sat beside her for a long time, listening to that breathing, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, and thinking about promises, the ones we make to others and the ones we make to ourselves. Eventually, Nancy returned, checking May's vitals and making notes on her tablet. "She's stable," she confirmed quietly. "The episode earlier was concerning, but she's responding well now." She looked at Lily with sympathy. "You look exhausted. When was the last time you slept properly?" Lily couldn't remember. Between double shifts at the restaurant and nights spent practicing at the community center, sleep had become a luxury she rarely indulged in fully. "I'll be fine," she said. "I need to stay with her tonight." Nancy nodded, understanding. "I can stay until my shift ends at midnight. You should at least try to rest for a few hours. Big day tomorrow from what I overheard." Lily hesitated. "I don't know if I'm going to that audition." "Your grandmother will be furious if you don't," Nancy said with a knowing smile. "And between you and me, that woman's determination is half of what's kept her going this long. Don't underestimate the power of seeing you succeed." Later, after Nancy had left and the apartment was quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitors and the distant sounds of the city outside, Lily sat at the small kitchen table with Anton's business card in front of her. The address was in the Arts District downtown, about 30 minutes by bus from their apartment. Could she really do this? Walk into that audition tomorrow, play for Anton and whoever else would be there, and then what? Even if they offered her something, a performance, a position, how would she balance that with caring for May? How would she find time to practice, to prepare? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the front door. Frowning. It was nearly 11 p.m. Lily went to answer it, peering through the peephole first. Robert Kensington stood outside, looking uncomfortable and out of place in his expensive suit. Surprised, Lily opened the door. "Mr. Kensington," she said, keeping her voice low so as not to disturb her grandmother. "What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry to come by so late," he said, genuinely apologetic. "Your colleague at the restaurant, Thomas, I believe, told me where to find you. I wanted to check on your grandmother, and on you." Lily was too tired and confused to hide her surprise. "That's unexpectedly kind of you." Robert shifted his weight, clearly not used to standing on the doorsteps of small apartments in this part of town. "May I come in? Just for a moment?" After a brief hesitation, Lily stepped aside to let him enter. The contrast between his tailored suit and the modest, slightly shabby apartment was stark. But Robert showed no reaction to his surroundings. "How is she?" he asked, glancing toward the living room where May slept. "Stable now," Lily answered, leading him to the kitchen where they could talk without disturbing her grandmother. "She had a bad episode earlier, but she's resting comfortably." Robert nodded, taking a seat at the small table when Lily gestured to it. "I wanted to apologize," he said without preamble, "for my behavior at the restaurant. It was inexcusable." Lily wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself, suddenly aware that she was still in her waitress uniform, now wrinkled from the long day. "You've already apologized, and paid quite generously for my performance. That wasn't an apology. That was fulfilling a bet." Robert's gaze was direct, his earlier arrogance replaced by something that looked like genuine remorse. "I humiliated you publicly based on assumptions I made about who you were and what you were capable of. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Lily studied Robert's face, searching for any trace of the arrogant businessman who had humiliated her at the restaurant. Instead, she found only sincerity in his eyes, along with something else, a quiet sadness she hadn't noticed before. "Thank you for the apology," she said finally. "But it's late and I need to be up early to check on my grandmother." Robert nodded but didn't rise to leave. "Anton told me about the audition tomorrow. Are you going?" "I don't know," Lily answered honestly, too tired to pretend. "My grandmother needs me here." "I see." Robert glanced around the small kitchen, at the stack of medical bills on the counter, at the worn linoleum floor, at the ancient coffee maker with its frayed cord. His gaze wasn't judgmental, just observant. "The $5,000. It won't last long with medical expenses, will it?" Lily stiffened. "We manage, I'm sure you do. But you shouldn't have to just manage while also caring for your grandmother and trying to pursue your music." Robert leaned forward slightly. "I have a proposal for you." Lily's guard went up immediately. "Mr. Kensington, please call me Robert," he raised a hand. "Just hear me out. My company has a charitable foundation. Part of what we do is support the arts and promising artists. After what I heard tonight, I'd like to offer you a grant." Lily's eyes narrowed. "A grant?" "Yes, it would cover your grandmother's medical expenses for 1 year, plus provide you with a stipend so you can reduce your hours at the restaurant and focus on your music." Suspicion flared in Lily's tired mind. "Why would you do that?" "You don't even know me." Robert's expression remained earnest. "Because talent like yours shouldn't be lost because of financial hardship. And because," he hesitated, "because I believe in making amends for my mistakes. My behavior tonight was inexcusable. So this is about easing your conscience?" A flash of hurt crossed Robert's face. "Partly, perhaps. Is that so wrong?" He sighed. "The truth is, your playing reminded me of someone. My daughter Eliza. She was a pianist too." The past tense wasn't lost on Lily. "Was? She died 3 years ago. Car accident." Robert said it simply, but Lily could see the pain beneath the words. She was 22, just starting her career. He looked down at his hands. "I wasn't always supportive of her music. I wanted her to join the family business, follow in my footsteps. We argued about it constantly." "I'm sorry," Lily said softly, her suspicion fading in the face of his grief. "When I heard you play tonight," Robert continued, "it was like hearing her again. Not just the talent, but the passion." He looked up, meeting Lily's eyes. "The grant comes with no strings attached. It's not charity, it's an investment in your future as an artist. All I ask is that you go to that audition tomorrow." Lily was silent for a long moment, weighing his words. The idea of having her grandmother's medical expenses covered for a full year, of having time to practice and play again without the constant stress of making ends meet. It was almost too good to believe. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Robert nodded, standing up. "Of course. Here's my card with my personal number. Call me after your audition tomorrow." He smiled slightly, "Which I hope you'll attend." After he left, Lily sat at the kitchen table for a long time, Robert's business card next to Anton's. Two opportunities she hadn't imagined possible just hours ago. She thought about May's words. "Promise me you won't let me stand in your way again." With a deep breath, Lily made her decision. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Lily had managed a few hours of restless sleep on the couch near her grandmother's bed. She woke to find May already awake, looking better than she had the night before. "You're going to that audition," May said firmly, before Lily could even mention it. "I've already called David. He's coming to sit with me." "Grandma, don't grandma me. I'm feeling much better today." May's eyes were clear and determined. "Nancy will be here at noon for her regular check-in. Between her and David, I'll be fine for a few hours." Lily hesitated, torn between her promise to herself to always put her grandmother first and her promise to May not to let her be the reason Lily gave up on music again. "What if they offer me something?" Lily asked softly. "A performance, a position with the orchestra?" "What then?" May's expression softened. "Then you take it. And we figure out the rest as we go." She reached for Lily's hand. "We've always found a way, haven't we? Through everything they had. Through the death of Lily's parents when she was just 8 years old. Through May, working multiple jobs to provide for her granddaughter. Through the discovery of Lily's musical talent and the sacrifices they'd both made to nurture it. Through Juilliard and then through May's stroke and all that came after. Go," May said, giving Lily's hand a squeeze. "Go play for Anton Baranov. Show him what I've always known, that my granddaughter is the most talented pianist in the city." 2 hours later, Lily stood outside the Metropolitan Philharmonic's rehearsal hall, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned, a simple black dress she'd worn to a coworker's wedding last year. Her hands were cold despite the warm morning, and her heart raced as if she'd run all the way from the bus stop. The building was imposing, all glass and steel and polished stone. Through the windows, Lily could see people moving about with purpose, carrying instrument cases, shuffling sheet music, all looking like they belonged there in a way she wasn't sure she did anymore. "You came." Lily turned to see Anton Baranov approaching from the parking lot, leaning slightly on his cane. He looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, but no less distinguished. "I almost didn't," she admitted. Anton nodded, understanding. "Your grandmother? She's the one who insisted I come." Lily smiled slightly. "She's very persuasive. I look forward to meeting her someday," Anton said, guiding Lily toward the entrance. She raised a remarkable pianist. Inside, the rehearsal hall was larger than Lily had expected, a vast space with soaring ceilings and a stage at one end. A magnificent concert grand piano sat center stage, its lid raised, waiting. What Lily hadn't expected were the people. At least a dozen musicians sat in chairs around the stage, instrument cases open beside them. A woman with a violin tucked under her chin was warming up in one corner. 2 men with French horns sat reviewing sheet music together. "I thought this would be a private audition," Lily whispered to Anton. "It is," he assured her. "But for the piece I have in mind, I need you to play with the orchestra, not just alone." He gestured to the musicians. "Just a small section of the full Philharmonic. They volunteered their time this morning." Panic fluttered in Lily's chest. She hadn't played with an orchestra in over 4 years. She wasn't prepared. She hadn't practiced enough. What piece?" she managed to ask. "The same one you played last night," Anton replied. "Rachmaninoff's Third, but just the first movement today." He studied her face. "Is that a problem?" It shouldn't have been. She knew that piece intimately, had played it countless times, had performed it with the Juilliard Orchestra before everything changed. But that was years ago. What if her fingers betrayed her? What if she embarrassed herself in front of these professional musicians? "I haven't played with an orchestra in a long time," she said, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. Anton's gaze was kind but assessing. "Music is like riding a bicycle, Lily. The body remembers even when the mind doubts. He gestured toward the stage. Take a few minutes to warm up. Get to know the piano. We'll start when you're ready. The walk to the piano felt endless. Each step took Lily further from the life she'd grown accustomed to, waiting tables, caring for May, practicing alone in an empty community center, and closer to the life she'd once dreamed of. The bench was perfectly adjusted. The piano itself was even finer than the one at the restaurant, a concert grand with an action so responsive it almost seemed to anticipate her touch. Lily ran her fingers lightly over the keys, playing a few scales, testing how it felt. Gradually, the nervous chatter of the musicians died down. They watched her with curiosity, and Lily was surprised to note respect. These were professionals at the top of their field, yet they waited patiently as she familiarized herself with the instrument. Whenever you're ready, Anton said, taking his place at the conductor's podium. We'll come in on your cue. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, gathering herself. She thought of her grandmother's fierce belief in her. She thought of Robert's unexpected offer and the story of his daughter. She thought of the restaurant falling silent as she played, of the feeling that had surged through her as the music flowed from her fingers. Then she began to play. The opening chords of Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto filled the hall. Unlike the night before, this time Lily wasn't playing alone. As Anton's hands rose and fell in precise, fluid movements, the orchestra joined her, the instruments blending with the piano in a conversation of sound that made Lily's heart soar. It came back to her more easily than she dared to hope, the give and take between soloist and orchestra, the subtle cues, the way Anton's conducting guided them all through the complex piece with invisible threads of intention. The muscle memory in her fingers was still there, still perfect after all these years. But something else had changed. The Lily who had played this piece at Juilliard had been technically flawless but sheltered, her understanding of the music coming from study rather than life. The Lily who played it now brought to the performance all the grief and struggle and perseverance of the past 4 years. The nights spent worrying about bills, the exhaustion of double shifts, the fierce love for her grandmother that had made every sacrifice worthwhile. It made her playing different, deeper, more honest. When the final notes of the first movement faded, there was a moment of complete silence in the hall. Then one of the violinists began to applaud, followed quickly by the rest of the orchestra. Their faces showed genuine appreciation, the highest compliment one musician could pay another. Anton stepped down from the podium and walked to the piano. The performance series I mentioned, he said quietly so only Lily could hear. It begins in 3 weeks. We need a soloist for the opening night. Rachmaninoff's Third. Lily's breath caught. 3 weeks isn't much time to prepare. For most pianists, no.
For you?
Anton's eyes crinkled at the corners. I think you'll manage. He handed her a folder. Here's the contract and details. The fee is standard for guest soloists with the Philharmonic. Lily opened the folder and almost gasped when she saw the figure. It was more than she made in 6 months at the restaurant. I need to talk to my grandmother, she said, her mind racing, and figure out her care while I'm rehearsing. Anton nodded, understanding. Of course, but I'll need your answer by tomorrow. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I think your grandmother already knows what you're going to decide. Parents usually do. As Lily gathered her things to leave, one of the cellists approached her. That was beautiful playing, she said warmly. I'm Grace, by the way. Principal cellist. Lily, and thank you, Grace smiled. We haven't had a soloist that connected with the orchestra so quickly in a long time. It felt like you'd been playing with us for years. She glanced toward Anton, who was speaking with some of the other musicians. He doesn't offer these opportunities lightly, you know. Anton's very particular about who he works with. Lily nodded, not quite sure what to say. The reality of what was happening, what might be happening, hadn't fully sunk in yet. Outside the rehearsal hall, Lily pulled out her phone to check on her grandmother. There were 3 missed calls from David. Her heart sinking, she quickly called him back. Lily? David's voice was strained. You need to come home now. What happened? Is it Grandma? She's conscious, but her blood pressure dropped again. Nancy came early and she's with her now, but... He hesitated. They think it might be time to consider the hospital. The folder with the contract suddenly felt heavy in Lily's hand. I'm on my way, she said, already looking for a taxi. As one pulled up to the curb, she added, And David? Tell her I played. Tell her it was good. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors and the soft whoosh of the oxygen machine. May lay still, her small frame barely making a bump under the thin blanket. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow but steady. Lily sat beside the bed, one hand holding her grandmother's, the other clutching her phone. She'd been here for 6 hours now, ever since the taxi had rushed her home from the audition to find an ambulance already waiting outside their apartment. Blood pressure keeps dropping, Nancy had explained as paramedics transferred May onto a stretcher. Her body's tired, Lily. She needs more care than we can give her at home. Now, in the sterile white hospital room with its antiseptic smell and fluorescent lights, Lily watched her grandmother's face for any sign of discomfort. The doctors had stabilized her, but they'd spoken in hushed, serious tones about quality of life and options for ongoing care. Words that carried heavy implications about both May's condition and the potential costs. The door opened softly, and David entered with 2 paper cups of coffee. "Any change?" he asked, handing one to Lily. She shook her head. "The doctor said she's stable for now. They want to run more tests tomorrow." She took a sip of the bitter hospital coffee. "Thank you for staying, David. You should go home, get some rest." "I'm fine." He pulled up a chair next to hers. "How was the audition?" Before all this happened? Despite everything, a small smile touched Lily's lips. "It was incredible. They offered me a position as a guest soloist. Opening night in 3 weeks," the smile faded. But now nothing," came a weak voice from the bed. Lily's head snapped up. "Grandma? You're awake!" May's eyes were open, alert despite her fragile state. "Of course I'm awake. Hard to sleep with you two talking." Though her voice was faint, the familiar sharpness was there. She squeezed Lily's hand with surprising strength. "Tell me about the audition. Every detail." So Lily told her about the beautiful concert grand piano, about playing with the orchestra, about Anton's offer and the contract now sitting in her bag, untouched since she'd received the call from David. May listened intently, her eyes never leaving Lily's face. When the story was finished, she nodded once, decisive despite her weakness. "You're going to accept." "Grandma, I can't think about that right now. You're in the hospital. The doctor said—" "I know what the doctor said," May interrupted. "I'm old, not deaf. They think I'm dying." She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Either way, you're taking that position. But no buts." May's gaze was steady, her voice gaining strength with her conviction. "I didn't raise you to throw away opportunities like this. Not for anything. Not even for me." Lily felt tears well in her eyes. "How can I practice, rehearse, perform when you're here? When you need me?" May's expression softened. "Oh, my girl. Don't you understand? Hearing about your audition today, seeing that light in your eyes again, that's what I need." She took a labored breath. "I've lived a full life, Lily. I've loved deeply. I've worked hard. I've seen my granddaughter grow into an extraordinary woman with a gift that can touch people's hearts. What more could I ask for?" A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse poked her head in. "Ms. Wang? There's a gentleman here asking to see you. Says his name is Robert Kensington." Lily and David exchanged surprised looks. "Robert's here?" Lily asked. "How did he know?" "I called him," David admitted sheepishly. "Found his card on your kitchen table. Thought he should know what happened, given your conversation last night." He raised his hands defensively at Lily's expression. "He seemed genuinely concerned about you both." After a moment's hesitation, Lily nodded to the nurse. "It's okay. He can come in." Robert entered cautiously, as if afraid of intruding. He carried a small pot of bright yellow flowers and a folder tucked under one arm. His usual business suit was gone, replaced by casual slacks and a sweater that made him look more approachable, more human. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, glancing from Lily to May. "I wanted to see how you were doing. Both of you. You must be the arrogant rich man who dared my granddaughter to play piano," May said bluntly from her bed. Robert winced slightly but didn't deny it. "I am, though I hope I'm slightly less arrogant today than I was yesterday." To Lily's surprise, May smiled. "Put those flowers on the windowsill and come sit down," she ordered, indicating a chair on the other side of her bed. "I want to look at the man who recognized my granddaughter's talent, even if his methods left something to be desired." Robert did as he was told, placing the flowers where directed and taking the seat next to May. He seemed oddly comfortable in the hospital room, not awkward like many visitors. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Wang?" "Like an old woman in a hospital," May replied dryly. "But I've felt worse." Her sharp eyes studied him. "Lily tells me you're offering her some kind of grant." Robert nodded, placing the folder he'd carried on the edge of the bed. "For her grandmother's medical expenses and to support her music. From my family foundation." He glanced at Lily. "No strings attached." May reached for the folder with a slightly trembling hand. "May I?" "Of course." May opened it and scanned the documents inside, her expression revealing nothing. When she finished, she closed the folder and handed it back to Robert. "Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's just because you're sorry about last night. Men like you don't throw money around just to apologize." Robert was quiet for a moment. Then, surprising everyone, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He handed it to May. "This is my daughter Eliza," he said softly. "She was a pianist, like Lily." May studied the photo. A smiling young woman seated at a grand piano, her posture perfect, her expression radiant. "Was car accident 3 years ago." Robert's voice was steady, but pain shadowed his eyes. "She was just starting her career when she died. We had disagreed about her music. I wanted her in the family business." He looked down at his hands. "The last conversation we had was an argument about her future." The room was quiet except for the machines monitoring May's vital signs. Even David, who had been checking his phone by the window, was watching Robert now. "I'm sorry for your loss," May said finally, handing the photo back. "Losing a child is something no parent should endure." Robert carefully returned the photo to his wallet. "When I heard Lily play last night, it was like hearing Eliza again. Not just the technical skill, but the passion, the soul behind the notes." He turned to Lily. "I can't undo my mistakes with my daughter, but I can make sure another talented musician doesn't have to choose between her art and caring for family." May's eyes filled with tears. "My granddaughter deserves this chance," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But she's stubborn. She won't leave me to pursue her music, even though that's exactly what I want for her." "I know," Robert said. "That's why the grant covers in-home nursing care for you. Or a quality care facility if that becomes necessary. Whatever you need." Lily, who had been quietly listening to this exchange, finally spoke. "It's too much, Robert. Too generous." "It's not charity," Robert insisted, echoing his words from the night before. "It's an investment in your future, and it's the right thing to do." He looked between Lily and May. "Please accept it. Let me do this one good thing." May reached out and patted Robert's hand. "You're not as arrogant as Lily described," she said with a small smile. "Underneath all that money, there might actually be a decent man." Robert laughed softly, a sound of genuine amusement. "I deserve that." A doctor entered then, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Wang, I need to discuss your grandmother's treatment plan." Lily stood up, but May waved her back down. "David can step out with the doctor and take notes for us," she said firmly. "You and Robert have things to discuss." She gave David a meaningful look and he nodded, following the doctor out of the room. When they were gone, May fixed Lily with her most determined gaze. "You're going to accept Robert's grant. And you're going to accept Anton's offer. That's final. Grandma, no arguments." May's voice was soft but unwavering. "I've spent my life making sure you had opportunities. Don't waste them now out of some misplaced sense of duty to me. My greatest joy would be seeing you on that stage again." Lily felt tears spill onto her cheeks. "What if something happens to you while I'm rehearsing? While I'm performing? Then I'll die knowing my granddaughter is doing exactly what she was born to do." May said it simply, without drama. "We all leave this world eventually, Lily. What matters is how we've lived. And I've lived to see you shine." Robert, sensing the intensity of the moment, stood up discreetly. "I should give you two some privacy. The paperwork is all there whenever you're ready." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Wang, I've never seen a person play the way your granddaughter does. The world needs to hear her music." After he left, Lily and May sat in silence for several minutes, hands still clasped together, each lost in her own thoughts. "I'm scared," Lily admitted finally. "Of playing again? After your audition today?" "No, of losing you." May's expression softened. "Oh, my sweet girl. You'll never lose me. Not really." She touched Lily's cheek gently. "I'll be there, in every note you play." 3 weeks later, Lily stood backstage at the Metropolitan Concert Hall, dressed in a flowing blue gown that rustled softly as she paced back and forth. Through the curtain, she could hear the audience finding their seats, the orchestra tuning their instruments, the growing hum of anticipation. Nervous? She turned to find Anton watching her, dressed in his conductor's suit, his silver hair neatly combed. "A little," she admitted. "It's been a long time since I performed for an audience this size." Anton nodded, understanding. "The hall is sold out. Word got around about our extraordinary new soloist." Lily's hands fluttered nervously, and Anton gently took them in his. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said softly. May had passed away peacefully in her sleep just 1 week earlier, with Lily by her side. The doctors had warned it might happen, but nothing could have prepared Lily for the overwhelming grief that followed. She had considered canceling tonight's performance, but Robert, who had been surprisingly supportive throughout, had reminded her of May's final wish. "She wanted to see you shine," he'd said at the funeral, where he'd stood quietly in the back, respectful of Lily's space yet present if needed. This performance would be the greatest tribute to her. Now, as the stage manager signaled 5 minutes until curtain, Lily took a deep breath and smoothed her gown. In the front row, she knew Robert was seated next to an empty chair, a chair that should have held May. He had arranged for it to remain vacant, a small card with May's name on it, the only indication of its significance. "Ready?" Anton asked as the orchestra finished tuning. Lily nodded, the familiar calm of pre-performance focus settling over her. "Ready?" As she walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, Lily felt a strange sense of peace amid her grief. The magnificent piano waited for her, gleaming under the stage lights. She took her seat, adjusted the bench, and looked up at Anton, who raised his baton. In that moment, just before the music began, Lily could almost hear her grandmother's voice. "Play, my darling. This is what you were born to do." And so she played, her fingers dancing across the keys, her heart pouring into every note. She played for the audience, for Anton, for Robert, for herself. But most of all, she played for May, sending the music upward like a prayer, like a promise, like a thank you for a lifetime of love and sacrifice. And somewhere, perhaps, May was listening.